From the gridiron to the diamond, this is more than X's and O's. This is your best Florida sports podcast with CBS 12 News sports director John Evenson and producer extraordinaire Sam Sullivan.
And Max the Megaphone Shepman.
Yeah.
We gotta change that intro.
Definitely.
Wait, I got another surprise for us. Are we ready?
So I love surprises. Oh.
I figured this is like the first time we could play this in a while, so
Can the listeners hear that? Yeah.
yeah, we'll fix it in post. Absolutely.
That should be the new tradition.
Hey!
After every win, Max plays his 1950s Dolphins victory song.
Yeah, this is a...
What year was that recorded?
well before I was born.
Fun fact. So when we did Dolphins Titans that game, they had the live rendition of it.
Oh, wow.
So fun fact.
Okay, well, maybe we can get them into the studio here, Sam. What week is this for the podcast now?
This
Best
is
Florida Sports.
episode number 10
Hey-o.
of the Best Florida Sports
Century
podcast. Long overdue intro. We'll get that fixed for you by next week.
Absolutely. It should have been like that all along because Max has been a great addition. And my gosh, you know what else is a great addition? Winning a football game. The Miami Dolphins won a football game. And guys, I want your take on this. This win, so massive because, okay, just picture if they had lost. The season would basically be over. What would we be talking about? You know, we'd be probably talking about some of the stuff that you were like talking about, like next year, will Jalen Wright be a big, you know? Instead, this has totally legitimately set them up to be 6-6 because you have the lowly Raiders next, you have the Patriots. These are now two games that, you know, if they don't win it, then they don't deserve it. And then you got that Green Bay game Thanksgiving Day to get them back to 6-6. This win, absolutely massive over the Rams, a 23-15 victory.
Definitely, and I think there was a lot of good takeaways from that game, especially from the defensive side. I thought they played very well. Calais Campbell looked like he was about 10 years younger out on that field.
Defense won the game, yeah.
All over the place, dominant. Chop Robinson getting another sack. I mean, just a huge performance, really, from the defense across the board.
You got to watch the game, Max, because I know you're working a lot, but it was Monday night. You were at home. Maybe you had some pops.
I took a little pre-workout, which probably shouldn't have done, but you know, to stay up for the game, absolutely.
You worked out. I mentioned drinking pops, and you mentioned
live
working
tweeting
out.
during the game
Yes,
nonstop.
yep.
That is a pro's pro right there.
For sure.
But to bounce what you said, Evanson, I think the way that the Dolphins won this game. I don't think when we previewed the game last week that we're like, oh, the Dolphins defense is going to come in clutch. Like, I don't think any of us saw the Dolphins defense leading the charge.
Because there had been so many injuries. There were so many question marks.
Right, and you were dealing with offensive weapons for the Rams and obviously the Dolphins and, you know, the first drive for the Dolphins, like right down the field score. Like, this was the drive we're looking for.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, Dolphins defense comes up clutch. You know, not to mention that the Rams had a lot of miscues in this game. Which,
Matthew Stafford was never comfortable.
No.
Ever.
No.
That entire game. I mean, Tua wasn't either, really. If we want to talk about that, we can get into that later. But look at the stats here. Incredible stuff. So 4 sacks for the defense. They had 10 coming in.
one of the things that, speaking of stats, one of the things that really impressed me was the Dolphins defense on third down.
Oh, yeah. Dominating.
Right.
Yeah.
I believe the Rams got their first third down conversion late in the third quarter. Mm-hmm. And when you're able to get offenses off the field on third downs, that's a really good pathway to success, trying to help your offense get the ball as much as possible.
And two turnovers were forced as well. And the thing was here, you guys would probably agree with me, the offense, far from perfect in this game. Very much flawed. We saw some good things, but some of the things were not good enough to win. And if the defense had not pulled off a massive performance like this, the Dolphins probably would not have won. And perfect timing. I'm down there today for Media Day as we get ready for the Raiders. And Max texts me, and everyone down there had just been buzzing about Deshaun Elliott's comments on that podcast about, like, of all weeks, why would he choose this week to like totally diss the defense he used to be a part of. But Max, you saw, well, you're a Steelers guy too, so what you saw this come down, right?
Yeah, so, the Punchline podcast with Marlon Humphrey, obviously he's a Baltimore Raven, interviewing Deshaun Elliott, who's now a Steeler. Obviously they're facing each other, but, Deshaun was kind of asked differences about teams, the championship culture in Baltimore, Steelers, and then he kind of mentioned the Miami Dolphins. Obviously, he played with them last year. Didn't go so great with that aspect of it. But
different defensive coordinator.
Right. So, and he really kind of had some colorful comments about the Dolphins culture and everything that's going on there. So, again, this is Deshaun Elliott and the Punchline podcast with Marlon Humphrey. This is what he really had to say about the Dolphins culture.
Let's give it a listen.
Last year I played for a team that was soft as I mean, oh my God, I can't put that on there. That was pretty soft. The guys on the team, but there were some guys who were tough, but like for the majority of the team, there was not mentally tough individuals.
You can just tell like the Miami culture is a reason why Miami will never be good. Like Miami will never be a good football team. And I don't care. They will never be good because of the Miami culture. I think they have great players, but the culture's not going to be there.
Them's fighting words. That was way more brutal a take than I thought, guys. That's the first time I've heard that, by the way.
Well, so I think what's interesting, not only like the timing of Deshaun's comments, but remember Jordan Poyer had kind of said something similar earlier this year about how when they got up on the Dolphins, they were more than likely going to fold.
That was almost from a defensive standpoint,
right?
Of
So
the opposition,
right.
Yeah.
So it kind of throws a question how the Dolphins are kind of catching these strays. Mm-hmm. And I think it's also interesting because these are kind of two well-known players around the league that are kind of coming out saying the Dolphins culture is not great.
You're right. If you talk about it from what they're saying about the Dolphins culture, you're right. But let's think about it this way: like when you have a buddy, when you're living up in the Northeast and you have a buddy who lives in South Florida, are you ever jealous? They've got the great weather. They've got a different mentality than ever. And Poyer, by the way, came and played for the Dolphins. Well, so he could not have really have thought that this was that horrible place to be. If he thought it was a bad culture, he wouldn't have come here, I would think.
Yeah, no, especially with what he's looking to do, which is to win a Super Bowl. So yeah, I mean, I saw those comments. First, I had to look up who this guy was because I was like, this is somebody who doesn't really have that big of an impact.
Those are fighting words for me and Sam, considering.
The war has started between you and Deshaun,
and it doesn't.
It's like me and Odell, but with Sam and Deshaun.
It doesn't really have an impact to this Dolphins team because Vic Fangio's gone.
Yeah.
A lot of those defensive pieces from the Dolphins are gone.
Different defensive coordinator.
It doesn't really play an impact to this team in the now.
And the timing, especially this week.
Right, because honestly,
coming off of such a great defensive performance.
Right, when you look at the performance that the Dolphins had on Monday night, they were the complete opposite of not physical. Excuse me. They were laying hits, stopping the run. So again, it's curious to see when these comments came out and how they came out. For context, when he talked about the culture, he also talked about last year how once they kind of got the injury bug, a lot of players would go out to strip clubs during the week and stuff like that. So I think he was also
beat that out. This is a family show.
I don't know. If Deshaun Elliott can put it on podcast, we can put it out there too.
So one of the reasons why the defense was so much better this week, or was it last week or this week? I guess officially it was this week because this was Monday night. But Kader Kohu was back. Thank goodness Zach Sealer was back. Javon Holland, the star safety, was back. So we were able to ask him in the locker room on Wednesday when we taped this podcast what his reaction was. He had heard it. He said he had heard it. So let's see. What do you think? Do you think Holland takes the high road, or he gets down in the mud with?
I think a little bit of both. I think he tries to take the high road, but I kind of feel like you would throw a little bit of shade in there.
All right.
There's bigger things in the future. I think he took the high road.
All right. Let's see if you guys are right. It's like a game show.
Yeah, I heard him make the comments. I saw the clip. I mean, honestly, man, if you want to call somebody out, go ahead and do it and drop names. But other than that, I mean, it's whatever makes you, whatever makes your boat float, whatever allows you to have, a good night of sleep, and as it is what it is. But if you're not naming nobody, you're not calling nobody out, then all the rest of the comments are just empty, he's just talking at that point. So, I wish nothing but the best for Deshaun. He's having a great year.
little passive aggressive there. Max was kind of right. You could read between the lines.
Honestly, I don't know how you guys approach things like that, but I kind of agree with Javon. Is like, if you're gonna do that, make sure to call out some names.
Yeah.
Because like if you're,
I
think especially with the aggressiveness of those comments, I think you got to throw those names out there at that point.
Yeah,
might as well.
Like when we call out people in the newsroom, we always make sure to mention Sam Sullivan.
Yeah, that's fair. Or John or Evenson, like, God, I hate that guy.
And I hear it, but a single tear just drips down my cheek.
He's a high road guy.
But it motivates me to do better.
Very high road guy.
In life.
High road guy.
Speaking of do better, this is perfect. You actually created a good transition here.
Natural.
What did you guys think when you were watching the game and you saw Tua Tagovailoa throw that interception and then try to tackle that guy head first and kind of throw his body in front of him and take a knee to the helmet? I got to tell you.
Were you as scared as I was?
I thought to myself, here we go again. Here we go again. This is it. And thank goodness that's not the case. But what was he doing?
We were watching it at the same time while I was putting together the 11 o'clock newscast, you putting together your sportscast.
How did I react?
Your reaction, I mean, you were straight up, you were pissed off. You were like, what is he doing?
Yeah.
Because he could have brought him down.
Do we have to beat that part? Pissed? Do we have to beat that word?
He could have taken him down.
I'm the beep man today.
Right.
Beep. I'm always ready for a beep.
He's the censor guy.
He could have taken him down probably 10 other ways, but decided to go down to under his hips to his knees and dive at him. Could have pushed him out of bounds, could have wrapped him up. I mean, I know he's not a defensive guy, so he might not know, the fundamentals, but to go down and lead with your head.
It was beep up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I'm not going to do that the whole show. I just want
you can.
one more.
You add a lot of colorful commentary. I like it. I think my problem with it is when you're looking at it, you had two offensive linemen behind you. Tua, that is.
Yes.
That can handle a tackle like that. And I believe I read somewhere that he was like, I'm not going to let them run down the sideline to get a score. And I was like, I understand the competitiveness in that, but when you look at the situation, like the concussions that Tua's had, you're a franchise quarterback. Yeah. You have two offensive linemen behind you that can easily just take them down, push them out of bounds, no problem. So I think that's like you. When I saw that live in action, I was like, this is it. Like, I'm expecting another cart to come out to get Tua.
Right.
Here we go, the start. Does Tua retire again?
He hasn't learned his lesson.
I was very surprised at how quickly he was able to get up, considering the results we've seen in the past.
So McDaniel keeps coming out. He came out on Wednesday again and said, we watched that with Tua. He understands the position he put himself in. And I now include, when I tell him not to take chances, I now include tackling other players on that list. And he saw that, and he's going to make adjustments moving forward. Then, when Tua came out, we asked him, whether he would have done that again. He said, I probably would have done that again. So he said before the game that he needs to be, whose ring doorbell is that? Is that somebody's at my door? So he said,
Tua's at his door.
Tua's coming. It's Deshaun. Deshaun came for you. That's your ring.
Yeah. My name's John.
So Tua says that he needs to be more careful before the game. I think Jeff Darlington, he did an interview.
He did the piece with ESPN.
I got to be more careful, and then he does that, and then today he says, it's just instinctual. I can't do anything about it. That's just how you play football from when I was a kid. So it's hard to really, the only thing I can conclude from it is that Tua can't help himself. This is going to be an ongoing thing, and unless... he just really...
Again, I understand the competitiveness of Tua. I understand that. But at the same time, again, we keep bringing it up. It's about the safety of yourself, and that should come first. And obviously, if Tua is not understanding the lessons of how to protect himself, then we enter the whole conversation as if Tua does get concussed again, that's kind of on him, not understanding the dangers that come with what he's trying to accomplish.
I just hope it's not at the...
Oh my God. Deshaun is pounding
I better get to the door. Hold on.
Right now.
One more sip of espresso.
Oh boy.
Now I'm going to throw...
You know who has high energy that doesn't need espresso?
Oh, I know. This is such good espresso, though. I found it. We're in the.
I was gonna say Chris Perkins.
We're in the other building.
He's got a little carried away.
Well, Chris Perkins, he gave me. He just handed me a handful of these pods of espressos.
Espresso beans.
So he's like, "Here you go, Evanson."
Little Cuban coffee.
Cuban coffee, because he's down in Miami, and he is the guy to talk to about stuff Dolphins related. He has his own podcast called Deep Dive.
Is he optimistic this week? Because he's
he traveled
the realist.
back. He looked pretty good considering he had traveled back from LA the day before, 6-hour flight. He looked fresh as a daisy today because of the victory. And here is our discussion. Chris Perkins of the Sun Sentinel and Deep Dive, Dolphins Deep Dive podcast. We are here with my favorite guest, Chris Perkins, who is the Sun Sentinel Dolphins columnist. And you're fresh back from LA, looking fresh as a daisy. The defensive-minded Miami Dolphins, defense first Miami Dolphins, doing what they do and coming up with a win.
Incredible that this team has kind of shifted, right? That you score 23 points and you get the victory and you're like, yeah, way to go defense. It's very bizarre to see this change. You don't see that deep passing game that we used to see with Tua to Tyreek Hill and Tua to Jalen Waddle. Recently, we've seen the 100-yard rushing games. We've seen Calais Campbell and Zach Sealer and Jalen Ramsey leading the defense. And so this team has kind of shifted a little bit. They're still an offensive team, but their identity, the way that they've won, has been more defense, ball control than high-scoring offense.
Yeah, everyone emphasizes complementary football all the time, but with this specific defensive performance, with Javon Holland coming back, Zach Sealer, I mean, Calais Campbell has just been a constant out there. I'm sure that has a lot to do with the success that they had, but how fragile is that? Like, I hate to say it, but I'm always nervous about Calais Campbell, wondering if he could play a whole season, just like I am about Teron Armstead with the O-line. Like, what happens when he inevitably, and maybe he won't this time, but how fragile is the defense, or do you think it's deep enough where this kind of performance can continue happening down the stretch here?
We've got to wait and see, really, John, but I think this defense is reliable, but this is not a defensive team. That's the thing, that's kind of how they're winning and getting by right now, but they weren't built for this. You know, if you had Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, you would feel a lot better about how the defense performs. But right now, you kind of think they're just kind of getting by, and they're doing a very good job getting by. I want to say they're maybe number 7 in the league in defense or something like that. Anthony Weaver, the first-year defensive coordinator, has done a great job finding out what this team does best and then playing to that. And again, when you're at full strength, and yes, Kader Kohu comes back in the slot, Javon Holland comes back, Zach Sealer comes back, now you're able to win the game as opposed to just kind of hang around like you did against Buffalo and Arizona. Now that defense is able to hold somebody out of the end zone. Only 5 field goals for the Rams, no touchdowns, and that makes a big difference.
Now, we've talked a lot about this, the inability to get Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle into the mix. Like, they've been more into the mix lately, but those deep plays are still nowhere to be found. Now, Tua's spreading the ball around a lot more now than he has been. I mean, Malik Washington, a cool touchdown, and Jonnu Smith back in the mix. But what is continuing to I mean, you see other big, deep threats doing stuff in the NFL. What's the deal with Tyreek and Waddle?
Man, I tell you, John, it's confusing because all the time I talk to the players in the locker room, I talk to the backup quarterbacks, the receivers. What they're telling me is it's those 2 high safeties or the 2 deep safeties, shell coverage, cloud coverage, whatever you want to call it, the 2 deep safeties back there who can basically double team Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, and then up at the line of scrimmage, they're playing press coverage. They're jamming them. So at the front end of the play, at the line of scrimmage, you jam these guys and you throw off that precision timing of the passing game. Then at the back end, you double cover them and they can't get those deep plays. Now, it seems to me that something is missing from that. It seems to me that there's like guys in high school who know how to beat press coverage, but
we need Robert Stack from Unsolved Mysteries to come back and do a whole investigation on
that. I mean, it's incredible. But for whatever reason, it's working very effectively against the Dolphins. So that's what everybody is doing, the 2 deep safeties and jamming them at the line of scrimmage, and Tyreek and Waddle cannot solve this. and it is throwing off that big play passing game that we've become used to seeing.
Well, thank good for the defense in Los Angeles. You had Tua Tagovailoa looking uncomfortable at times. The offensive line maybe skipped a beat for this particular game, only 60 yards rushing. And while the Raiders are, I think, second in the league as far as giving up points, they've got the Max Crosby factor, right?
Yeah.
So that comfort level might not really be risen too much this week with someone like that staring you down and salivating as far as Tua Tagovailoa goes, right?
Yeah, that's going to be a big challenge for this team, is containing Max Crosby. And look, we know that Austin Jackson, the Dolphins' right tackle, is now on injured reserve with a knee injury he sustained against Buffalo. Kendall Lamb started last week against the Rams, did a pretty good job. I have faith in Kendall Lamb. You remember last season against Dallas that Kendall Lamb started at right tackle, and he controlled Micah Parsons, maybe the best pass rushing linebacker in the NFL. Now, it wasn't straight one-on-one every snap. Dallas moved Micah Parsons around, but Kendall Lamb did a very good job. He did a decent job on Monday. I'm expecting Kendall Lamb will do a good job against Max Crosby. Lamb is a veteran, and plus it's not going to be just Kendall Lamb. They're going to have tight end, running back help out there also, but I think Kendall Lamb will do a good job. I'll tell you also this, the Raiders are an absolute disaster, right? We know that they fired their offensive coordinator and 2 other offensive coaches after their loss to Cincinnati. They had a bye week last week. We know that our friend Christian Wilkins is on injured reserve. He won't be coming back. They're struggling. They had a kind of a players and coaches meeting to kind of air out some grievances there. You're wondering how long Coach Antonio Pierce can keep a handle on this thing, but the Dolphins need to just plaster the Raiders. They are a dumpster fire.
Yeah, the quarterback situation is very similar to what we were dealing with in those when Tua was out, right? They don't know. They're trying everything that they can.
Yeah.
What is it? Is it Raider this week?
I think Aiden O'Connell is going to play this week. He had the fractured thumb.
Yeah.
Their last game, though, Gardner Minshew started. He was a disaster. They played Desmond Ridder, who they had just signed recently, I think, from Arizona's practice squad. We saw Desmond Ridder here in the summer with Atlanta, so he's bounced around. Again, a dumpster fire. The Dolphins need to get everything going, John. This needs to be a get-right game, right? You get that deep passing game going. You get the sacks going. And by the way, the Dolphins had 4 sacks last week. They didn't have to blitz a lot, so that was good on Anthony Weaver's part. But this is one of those games where you just want to just hammer the Raiders and make a statement.
So one more for you. It looks like the path back to 6-6 is there because the next 2 games, the Pats are next, and then you got Green Bay to get back to 6-6 on Thanksgiving. That'll be a challenge. But what are 1 or 2 teams down the stretch here on the schedule that you're like, wow, they better have everything going for these guys? What's the biggest challenge going to be, do you think, as far as trying to win 6 of the next 8?
Well, I think the Dolphins' path to the playoffs remains the same. And I had told you earlier this year, they've got to beat the non-playoff teams on their schedule. So if you look at the remaining 8 games, your toughest games, probably the playoff teams, are going to be against Green Bay on Thanksgiving. I think they're 6-4, or 6-3. Houston is a road game. They're 6-3, 6-4, and then San Francisco here, they're like 5-4. They've had some personnel issues. Christian McCaffrey is back, but I think those are the 3 games that you're looking at. And then after that, you need to beat the Jets twice. You need to beat Cleveland. You need to beat the Raiders. You need to beat the Patriots. But the path is there.
The Dolphins do need to be near perfect and step it up.
They do. And look, I was saying, John, that I think it would be more shocking if they don't get to 5-6. Than it was that they started out 1-3, right? Because now that they've beaten the Raiders and they're 3-6, you're just expecting 4-6, or beat the Rams to get to 3-6. You're expecting 4-6 with the Raiders, 5-6 with the Patriots, and then you go into that Green Bay game on Thanksgiving night with a 3-game winning streak, some momentum, some hopes of getting to 500, and some hopes of really getting back into this playoff race.
If they can't get to that situation on Thanksgiving Day, then
it's pretty much
yeah.
I'll say this, it is pretty much over. We remember last year, though, Buffalo was 6-6, and they ended up winning the division. So, if they don't have
the caliber of team that could get them in that situation by Thanksgiving, then what's the point anyway?
Yeah, right. You're right. Yeah, if you lose one of these next 2, it's you might not deserve to be talking about 6-6, right? So yeah.
All right. Well, hey. Thanks, Burke. You're the best, man.
All the time, man.
And we'll get ready to cover some wins. Gotta love Perk. He's written some pretty honest, nasty, sort of very opinionated, may have made some of the Dolphins angry type articles.
Well, yeah, you can appreciate media members that don't just suck up to the team because they cover them all the time.
Yeah, and he was as optimistic as I've seen him this year, as we all are after that.
Did you not see how we started the damn podcast this week? We played the Dolphins song. You can't get more optimism than that.
Play it again.
Oh, I got to pull it up. I don't have it up.
Well, let's talk about the O-line then.
Yes.
Let's get into one negative, semi-negative topic. O-line took a little bit of a step back against the Rams. Tagovailoa looked uncomfortable for a lot of that game. Didn't have all that much time in the pocket. I think rushing was only, 60 yards rushing this time around after a bunch of 100-yard performances. Austin Jackson, we've learned after the game, since the game was played, that he's lost for the season. Although Kendall Lamb, he's a really good kind of guy to take over there. I mean, are you guys concerned at all about the only thing I can say is Teron Armstead has been healthy miraculously for the entire season. We haven't seen that, knock on this wood on my neck here, my head. It always scares me. If Teron goes, I wonder what's going to happen. But what's your thought on what you saw from Tua Tagovailoa and his reaction to the O-line, the blocking?
Yeah, I mean, last week we were ranting and raving about the offensive line and how great they've been this season. I mean, yeah, they take a step back, if you will, but I wouldn't even really call it that. I mean, that's a tough defensive front from the Los Angeles Rams, and they're going to deal with some problems too with the Raiders this week. But I think this team is more than capable of continuing to put up great performances and really they kind of become the backbone of the offense, believe it or not. With all of the playmakers that are out there, they've really been able to hold it down and keep this team consistent.
I'm scared of Max this week. Not this Max.
Oh.
Another Max.
You should be scared of me all the time.
Raiders, what are they, second worst in the NFL as far as giving up points? But Max Crosby, man, always a threat. Tua Tagovailoa, he's just be staring down Tua, as I mentioned, to Chris Perkins and just salivating the entire game.
Yeah, I mean, obviously one of the best pass rushers in the league. And, it's kind of tough for the Dolphins to have some line injuries at this point. Mm-hmm. Not only can Max Crosby sack the quarterback, but he's very good in the run game as well. So, you kind of mix that in with last week's performance, or technically this week's performance against the Rams. Not great running game against the Rams. Yeah. Obviously allowed a couple sacks as well. A couple of those on Tua for not getting rid of the ball. Mm-hmm. Which, Tua, get rid of the ball, please.
Yeah. Bad habits coming back.
Right. So I think the Dolphins have to be very cautious with how they approach Max Crosby this week.
All right. And so wait, Chop Robinson, though, on the other side. Another sack.
Another sack.
Yeah. We played that game last week, right?
Right. We played the game last week. Star, one-hit wonder.
Yeah.
I think he also feeds. I think one thing Chop is doing well now is he's feeding off Calais Campbell. Yes. Obviously, you saw Calais player of the game. Player of the game off the first offensive series of the game. I think, again, we talked about this last week, just being able to watch Calais day in, day out, see how he does in game action, and then follow it up. Because, as Calais is drawing more attention to himself, that opens up Chop Robinson. Huge. And obviously we saw that he's able, with the opportunities he's getting, to get to the quarterback.
What did McDaniel call? McDaniel called Calais Campbell the Tom Brady of D-lines today, which I thought was
high praise. Very high praise.
Yeah,
very high praise.
So yeah, big time. All right, high praise. Speaking of high praise, Sam Sullivan. He just comes up with the most amazing analysts from the other side. And I'm just curious as to who you may have tracked down this week.
Yes, I spoke to Chris Mathis.
Was that patronizing? Was I being kind of patronizing?
Patronizing. Isn't it patronizing?
Patronizing. You can say it either
Canadian.
way. You can say it either way. I don't think that was a Canadianism.
I think it's patronizing.
Patriot. Yeah.
Regardless, I didn't see it that way. No, but I did speak to Chris Mathis, CBS Las Vegas.
Vegas.
Right, you went right to the strip.
I could say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but not with the Zoom interview.
I flew out there for the day to talk to him.
Good for you.
No, I didn't.
And I'm the gambler.
Right. Oh, I didn't say I gambled.
Oh, okay. You went to
No,
Vegas? You didn't gamble?
No, I just looked at
We obviously know what's on Evanson's family itinerary when he goes out there.
I looked at the casinos and didn't do anything.
All right. Well, good. You got some
You got
info,
good
though.
strength.
But we weren't talking odds or over-unders. We were talking about the Raiders and this matchup and kind of how this Raiders team has really been all over the place with injuries, trades, and all of that bad stuff. So take a listen.
You know, of course, you guys are coming off the bye, but we'll backtrack and we'll go to that game against the Bengals, losing 41-24. Not really showing, you know, any sort of dominant part of your offense, really, and of course, letting up 5 touchdown passes from Joe Burrow. You know, what did you take away from that game?
Well, what we've taken away is the Raiders have lost 5 in a row now. The problem with the Raiders, they come out and they play those scripted 15 plays, whatever, to begin the game so well, and it's almost as if after those 15 plays, they're lost and they can't make adjustments. They're not making the proper adjustments, and then things just kind of fall apart for them. But they have been awesome with these scripted plays to start again. They marched right down and scored touchdowns and really have kind of taken control early. But then it's after that, they just, for some reason, it's whatever it is, whether it's adjustments, which they made some changes, as you recall. You know, they got rid of Luke Getsy, the offensive coordinator, and the quarterback's coach and the O-line coach. So maybe that might change some things, but that's probably been the biggest issue. Is you don't see any adjustments. You see the turnovers. They can't rush the ball. The offensive line, many people thought going into the season, this is going to be a pretty talented line with Colton Miller, and that hasn't worked. And they've had some injuries on the defensive side with Christian Wilkins, their big high-priced free agent. That hasn't worked out because he got hurt. In the secondary, they've been banged up a little bit. So it's just been one thing after another, and that's led to this and quarterback play too. They can't find a quarterback that's, you know, they start with Gardner Minshew, then they go to Aiden O'Connell. He hurts his hand. They come back to Minshew. And then the last game you mentioned, that Bengals game, Desmond Ridder was in there at the end of the game. So I kind of get a feeling against Miami, though, they're going to go back to Minshew. I think he probably gives them the best chance to win the game and to compete against the Dolphins. But who knows? It's just, you know what, with Scott Turner now elevated, Luke Getsy out. Scott Turner is now the offensive coordinator. I don't know what he can do in 2 weeks' time with this bye week, and really probably just a week and a half. But I don't know if there'll be that many changes. But maybe he, puts a few new wrinkles in there and they change a few things up. But I have a feeling they'll go with Minshew. But who knows?
And you talk about all the changes that the team has seen just within the past week and a half. But, throughout the season, you talk about the injuries, changes in coaches. Of course, you guys trade away Devontae Adams. What do you think this team's identity is right now? And what do you think they're looking for their identity to be moving forward?
Well, that's a good question because as of right now, 9 games into the season, they really have no identity. It's the craziest thing. Antonio Pierce coming out of camp in the summer wanted this team to be a throwback Raider team. We're going to pound the ball. We're going to run the ball. They're going to mix it in with some passes. We got Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers and that sort of thing. And it's never worked for whatever reason. It has never worked. And if you asked me even right today, what is the Raiders' identity? Who knows? They can't pass the ball. They can't run the ball. They're the best. The bright spot. The one bright spot on this team is Brock Bowers, the tight end, the Georgia tight end that came over, a rookie guy. He's just playing great. I mean, if you had to look at one star on this team right now, it's been him. Then the other tight end, they were talking about this 2 tight end set, and then Michael Mayer has been out for weeks with an undisclosed personal reason. So who knows, what's going to happen. But if you talked about identity right now, they really don't even have an identity. It's crazy.
They've got a lot of playmakers the Dolphins do on their offensive side with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, young running back, Devon Achane playing very well. How do you think this team matches up against the Dolphins?
That's going to be really interesting to see how Tua, what he does. We watched him against the Rams on Monday night. You got a couple of teams now. Of course, Dolphins win that one, so they got 3 wins. But I was talking to Antonio Pierce yesterday at this turkey fundraising deal. for a group here in town, and he was talking about that, how they just need to be more consistent. That's the problem with the Raiders. Just they'll show flashes of really being competitive, and yet they take a period and a half off of not being very good. So if they can be a little bit more consistent, I think it's going to be an interesting game, though. I don't think the Dolphins are a team you fear right now. Someone like the Raiders, nobody fears the Raiders right now. I think it's going to be an interesting game because they're kind of similar in the sense of injuries, the quarterback play. Of course, you're getting Tua back now, so that might make a big difference. But I'll be interested. Another thing that's kind of interesting that just happened this week was the this players only meeting that happened. I'm sure your viewers have been kind of following that, where the players got together and the coaches, and some of the issues they were talking about was scheduling, not being efficient. Lack of organization. I kind of wrote some of these things down. Wasting time in practice, lack of discipline, needed more accountability. From what the report was from CBS, a guy named Jonathan Jones, that whole meeting was kind of just uncomfortable. But when you got all those issues, efficiency and accountability and discipline, wasting time in practice, those are big deals. And for a team that's 2-7, obviously there's going to be some talk. Something's got to change. And so these players get together. And I thought it was interesting. It was uncomfortable. And those kind of meetings probably are pretty uncomfortable if you start pointing fingers and looking at oneself in the mirror when you're 2-7. That's going to be a big deal to kind of see how the Raiders come out of all this to take on the Miami Dolphins Sunday morning.
Now, do you think when a meeting is held like that, do you think a team can sort of, create a turning point and sort of flip things around for this season? Or do you think that's something that really kind of takes time and it's more of in the future looking to next season where you can really see those adjustments and changes being made?
Well, if you go back to last year, they had a similar meeting like this, a players meeting, and there was all these grievances, and a lot of fingers were pointed right at Josh McDaniels, and they let Josh McDaniels go, and the Raiders went on to win 5 of 7 or whatever it was. They had a decent second half of the season. So, it might help. You still have some of your leaders, Max Crosby. He's nobody works harder than Max Crosby. So if he's your anchor and everybody kind of rallies around him and works hard and takes note of what he does and goes out and works hard, they may have a chance to do something. Some of these guys Tyree Wilson's got to step up. And I know they're hobbled. Robert Spillane's having another good year. He's got to step up. So all these guys, Nate Hobbs is in, so many injuries, and you just don't know. But it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this meeting, because last year something positive came out of the meeting. Josh McDaniels out and Antonio Pierce in. So we'll see.
Now, I ask this to every analyst I talk to each week, and it's a tough one to ask because you're looking ahead, you're trying to guess what it could be, but I'm curious to know what your score prediction is for this game, Raiders against the Dolphins.
That's a good question. I'm going to say, I don't know who's going to win, but I'm going to say it ends up somewhere in the 20s, a tight game, maybe a 4-point game. What are the sports books saying? Probably, what are they saying? Maybe 3-4 point game right now? Is that kind of maybe a 5-point game?
Yeah, I think around that range for right now.
Around that range right there. So I haven't looked, but I'm guessing it's right around there. So I'll you get 3 points for the home field advantage. So probably 2 3s. Yeah, probably 5-6 points. But I'm going to say the game ends up in the 20s, and somebody catches a break at the end and wins by 3. How about that?
One thing I can definitely predict, because we've seen it, is Tua Tagovailoa is going to be spreading that ball around again.
Shout out Odell! Shout out Odell!
That big first down
that
he
right.
got late in the game to nail it down. Actually, it led to that field goal. Perfect example, Odell Beckham, who you've been tough on. That might have been him at your Ring doorbell.
He might have.
He might have been there at your house.
We could take another infamous boat photo and here in Palm Beach.
What about Malik Washington? With the first touchdown there. So and then you got River Cracraft, who's back. Really frustrating injury in preseason, actually, on that touchdown, and he dabbled a little bit in this game. But I would expect River Cracraft to be a big part of this Raiders game and more moving forward. I had a chance to catch up with him in the locker room.
River, there's so much excitement coming into the season, and then of all things, on a big touchdown play to get hurt the way you did. I know that must have been crushing. Can you just get me up to date on sort of what that was like for you and how limitedly it was to be out there again against the Rams.
Yeah, it was very frustrating. I felt like I'm 8 years into this league, and I felt like I was at my peak as far. I still feel like I'm growing as a player and athletically and everything. I know it doesn't work like that for a lot of people, but the way the game was going, the way that I felt out there, the comfort, the trust that Tua had in me, I felt like things were kind of at an all-time high at that point, and immediately went down to a low. I felt the crack when I hit the ground, and I knew something was broken, and it's devastating. There's nothing you can do about it. I've watched that play hundreds of times, trying to coach myself on what I could have done differently to not get hurt, and I'm open to all suggestions. All I can think about is just if I didn't catch the ball, maybe I didn't get hurt, but that is frustrating, and that's something that I'm going to have to build back, and you got to build that trust back. It doesn't matter who you are or what position you were in. When you come back, you got to get in where you fit in. You got to earn it back, and I'm okay with that, and that's what I'm doing right now. But
now, are you earning your own trust in your body back a little bit too when you're out there, or was it literally just a freak accident? Like being out there for those few plays that you were against the Rams, was there anything in the back of your mind like, let's make sure I'm healthy here?
Well, there's only so much you can simulate in a practice setting. We've done as much as we can to prepare for impact and all these things, but when you have the injury that I had, you're not going to intentionally go body slam the ground to see if it'll hold up. You know what I mean? So, or there's not a lot of tackling to the ground involved in practice in the NFL. So, there's certain situations that you can't really simulate. You do the best that you can. You use things like crash pads and whatever, bags and things like that. But until you're out there, there's always going to be a little bit of element of, okay, I might have to feel out a couple of these, So I think my first snap in the game, which unfortunately I only got 3, so I didn't get too many chances to feel it out. But I think on my first snap I had to block a DN, and it was kind of like, all right, that's not your ideal, and he kind of, he got the best of me on that one. So it's like, all right, I kind of went to the sidelines like, all right, I got the first one out of the way. I'm all right. Yeah. Now we can play football and get back to what we do.
The way this offense has been looking, especially the last game, is Tua spreading that ball out, like a lot of different people, Malik and Jonnu Smith back. So seeing that must be pretty exciting to know that you could fit into that really well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's really, I was here in the off season, obviously, and through training camp, but it's my first time being out there with some of the guys that weren't out there last year, like Malik and Jonnu, and to see what they bring to the table on a first-hand basis is very cool and exciting. Those guys are elite players, and like I was just telling Barry, Malik's gonna be around here for a long time. He keeps doing what he's doing, so happy for him, proud of him, and excited to join him.
Do you appreciate fans just love? You see it all over. Like fans just have taken to you for whatever reason it is. Hardworking guy, cool name, whatever it is. But like that's a dream to be an NFL player, but to also be beloved.
Yeah, I mean, I've put in a lot of hard work to get into the spot that I'm in, and for people to recognize me as a hardworking guy is something that I take pride in, and I don't take it for granted. And I do appreciate the people that invest in the organization and have seen what I've done, and hopefully what I'm going to continue to bring to the team and things like that. But I do appreciate it. It does mean a lot, and something that I don't take for granted. I promise you that. It's definitely something that a lot of people work for.
Best of luck. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Evenson, each week I love coming up with new segments. It's time for a game show. Let's make a deal.
Is it? I don't know.
I have no idea.
It's one of those 70s game shows.
I don't know.
Maybe it's not
Match Game. That was Match Game.
Oh, Match Game.
That was
Okay. Yeah, my grandma used to watch all that.
Hey, listen.
All right, so here
I could be your grandpa then. You want to be my grandson?
Oh God, I have to have your jeans. Yikes.
My jeans wouldn't fit you, buddy. I don't even know it. Where are we going? Okay,
what a dad joke of the year.
Let's get to it.
All right, so obviously, we're Dolphins playing Vegas this year.
Yeah.
We all know what Vegas is all about: a little gambling, casino, card games.
I was going to say swimming pools, but and poolside drinks. But yeah, go ahead.
That is not the second thing I thought he was going to say, but okay. This game is called Deuces Wild.
Wow.
So I'm going to give you
Quite a name.
I'm going to give you 4 props for this upcoming game.
Okay.
Each of the props has to do something with the number 2. Could be 2, 200,
Yes.
and we'll go higher over. You ready?
Wait, I don't get the concept. Say it again.
Deuces Wild, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to give you 4 props for this game.
Okay. Oh, okay.
The props have to deal with some sort of the number 2.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Okay.
We good?
See if I catch on here. You go first.
All
Seth.
right, here we go.
Yeah.
The first prop that we are going with. Tua throws for 200 yards in the first half.
Under. There's no way. I mean, I could see him getting kind of close, but he finished on Monday with 207. So I'm going to safely say under.
I'm going to say, hot take, over. I think that they come out
just guns blazing.
By a lot or by a little?
I think it's going to be like, oh my gosh, Tua close to 300 yards passing.
Wow.
There's going to be finally some long bomb touchdowns, maybe a Tyreek 90-yarder.
I'm hoping for it.
You know, just a lot of sustained drives that just I think it could add up. And then I'm going to go further and say they bring in Skylar Thompson in the second half because it's such a blowout.
Wow.
I made up that last part. I'm pulling back on that last part. But yes.
No, go ahead. Hot take it, dude.
Over 200.
All
Over
right.
200.
All right, I like
over
that.
200,
Just so everybody aware, Raiders 195 yards passing per game given up.
In the first in the first half?
11th overall.
Well, that's per game.
Per game.
First half stats you're talking there.
No.
Just for your sake? No.
Okay,
Over.
so that'll change this week. Mark my words.
All right, so the second prop that we have for this.
Yeah.
Let me get my little notes out. Sorry, I have lots of notes. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle combined for 250 yards receiving.
I'm going to say under because that's just not what this offense has been. That's not what we've seen. They are officially the most expensive decoys in the NFL.
Wow.
And they'll
I think that was Tyreek and Jalen Waddle at your doorbell.
They're going to get it. No, they're going to get into the action. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I think it was McDaniel who said that even though you're not seeing those big numbers, he's probably Tyreek is probably just as important as he's ever been as moving forward. Just having him out there alone allows them, along with the running game, to be able to have all these options.
Were you surprised he wasn't as more involved in the Rams game as he was? Tyreek.
I keep hoping every week that we're going to see what we expected to see at the beginning of the season, but I'm starting to accept the fact that the other teams aren't allowing that to happen. The Raiders, who knows? They may be the first one to not know how to handle those two, but the offense has kind of morphed into something a little different, I've noticed.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everyone else has, obviously.
I'm going to have to go under as well. I mean, 250 yards combined, I mean, that is crazy. Now, if you were to combine, like, Achane and Waddle, maybe, but the two of them, up to this point,
It'd be a tough bet.
Really? All right. Okay. All right.
Juice is wild.
See, we need some
Now I'm doing
intros like this
transitions.
for this. I like this. All right, here we go. Prop number 3. Max Crosby gets 2 sacks this week.
That's going to be a push. He's going to get 2 exactly.
2 exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
what do you know what his sack total is on the season?
I don't.
I would have to guess it's probably under 10. Yes.
Apologize for all the notes that I have. Don't have Max Crosby's sack number.
Of all the things.
I think he'll have 2.5 sacks.
Okay, going over.
He'll barely get over.
Juice is wild.
All right. See, we need that everywhere.
Right.
All right, last one. Dolphins, 2 wins in a row.
100%.
For sure.
Yep. In fact, they are going to go into that Green Bay game on Thanksgiving Day at 5-6. I don't think there's any question. Question is, do they beat the Packers on
That's a tough one.
or ruin everyone's Thanksgiving? Which one's going to happen?
That's a
one
tough
game at a time.
Yeah,
I want a
we'll
snow
get there.
game though. That's
We'll get
one
there.
thing I do know. I want to be sitting there on Thanksgiving, watching the Dolphins and Packers play in a snowstorm.
Wow.
At Lambeau?
Yeah.
That would
Historic
not,
Lambeau?
That would not be good for Tua or Jalen Waddle.
You're right, but who knows? Maybe
it's good for Achane.
Because right now, they have that rep of not winning the tough games. What are the Packers right now? They're pretty good. They're like 6 and are they 6-3?
I believe.
So So anyway, the Dolphins should be that too, so maybe that's not the best gauge, but that kind of makes it into a wild card situation, no pun intended, when they're trying to make a wild card, to have it in a snowstorm. I think that'd be fun.
A lot of wild going on in this segment.
Wild. Deuces wild. Okay, that's the last transition.
I like that.
That was a good game, though. Thank you. Do you want to open the Mags paper before we go? And see
yes. Our special projects coordinator here at CBS 12, Mike Magnoli, apparently has some questions for us.
Those are questions?
Apparently, yes. I have not read
Look
this.
them through before you
Yeah, well,
read them.
let's see here.